Hey everyone, so One Piece chapter 1100 just came out. 1100 chapters of One Piece, that is absolutely insane. But it doesn't matter, because we got a bunch of interesting lore reveals, plus one really strange question that was raised at the end of the chapter, which was, what the hell is Kuma doing at Luffy's hometown before Luffy's journey even began? So we're gonna get to that big one last. But first I have something really exciting to show you. This is the best piece of One Piece merch you will ever see. A 1,000-piece puzzle featuring every single major character in One Piece. That's right, literally one of the greatest One Piece artworks ever made is now a gigantic buildable jigsaw puzzle. This is the perfect gift for any One Piece fan that you know, or something for you to enjoy for yourself, piecing together this amazing tapestry of One Piece characters. After you've solved the final piece, you now have a beautiful work of art that you can even frame and put on your wall. This holiday season, we are selling this unique One Piece puzzle exclusively in the Morge store. It comes in 500 or 1,000 piece variations, and it's perfect for all ages. The puzzle is really high quality, the chipboards have satin finishes, precise cutting, and it has professional packaging. The artwork itself is made by the talented artist Aidan Capristo, whose Instagram is featured below. We are only selling this for the holiday season through December, so get your puzzle today. It really is the ultimate gift for any One Piece fan you may know, and of course, you're not going to want to miss out on getting it for yourself, so just hit the link in the description below. That aside, I think the first interesting thing to talk about is the little tidbit of history that we got regarding Kuma's joining the Shichibukai and what was going on before that. I thought that this was a great way to just to make the One Piece world feel like a living, breathing world. I've done videos in the past talking about how that is one of Oda's greatest strengths. The fact that not just that he cuts around to various locations in the One Piece world, but anytime we're getting a little bit of history, we can see how that piece of history intersects with what other characters are doing at that same point in time, what they were doing during that era, during that period, how their plans were shaping up, where they were at just in terms of their motivations, what they were thinking about, all of that. So here, what Oda chose to do was basically put it in the context of Kuma becoming a Shichibukai. Again, from the very beginning of Kuma's story, we could tell that this was going to be a really lore-heavy backstory, just because we're going to get to see, as we understood, we're going to get to see this character go through slavery, so basically getting an insight into the Celestial Dragons. Then we're going to get to see him become a king, so we're going to get some context on islands and dynamics with the world government there. Then we knew that we were going to get to see him become a revolutionary, so obviously with Dragon and everything. Then get to see him become a pirate, see him interact with Vegapunk, Kizaru, etc. And then finally we knew that we were going to get to see him become a Shichibukai, which Oda could have just done as a standalone thing, just saying, you know, making the deal with Saturn, you're a Shichibukai now. But Oda did make it feel like a resonant sort of event, because that is a big deal. If you all remember, when Crocodile was being changed out of the Shichibukai and Blackbeard was taking his spot, that was the first time that we really got a look at the broader One Piece world, right? We got to take a look at how the other Shichibukai were reacting, the big meeting, the gears in motion for Blackbeard to take his place. So Oda kind of did the same thing in a quicker fashion just now this chapter. We got to cut around to the different Shichibukai. We even got to see Crocodile in the middle of his schemes with Nico Robin and everything like that to take away the rain from Alabasta, so that was a nice little touch. And we got a quick shout out, or not a shout out, but a quick cameo of Ace, and just giving us the context that Ace was the reason that there was a Shichibukai spot missing in the first place. So not only was Ace offered a spot among the Shichibukai, he is the reason that there was an empty spot to begin with. I think that is so cool because, you know, just we understand that Ace was a character with a ton of potential, you know, a very fast meteoric rise, and you can't help but feel the parallels to Luffy and Luffy's first, you know, his first 1 year as a pirate. And it's always nice to just get that reminder that, yeah, Ace really was that guy. He had the potential, just as much potential as Luffy, to become Pirate King at the end of the day. It's part of the tragedy of why Ace's life was cut short, but also helps us understand the weight of why it's so important that Luffy keeps on following in Ace's footsteps, and also just narratively why Ace had to be written out of the story, because you can't have two. You can't have Luffy and Ace in the story. There can only be one main character, so the big brother had to go to pave the way for the younger brother. So anytime you get Ace in that sort of a context, I feel like it just adds a little bit more to Luffy's story, which is nice to see because that's where the chapter ends off, us getting to look at the start of Luffy's story. I mean, we thought we saw the start, right? Chapter 1, but there was something, a missing chapter. It almost feels like we're about to get to take a look at a missing, lost chapter of Luffy's story, because whatever reason that Kuma is here, we know that it's something that is most likely going to shape Kuma's opinion of Luffy in the future and leave some sort of an impression that makes it important to Kuma that down the line, he helps save Luffy and his friends. Because we really don't know at this point in time how aware Kuma is of the potential of Luffy being Nika, and at what point Kuma would even have thought of Luffy in that light, because Kuma and Luffy, they really didn't interact that much pre-time skip, right? Kuma showed up at Thriller Bark, but Luffy was unconscious at that time. Kuma showed up at Sabaody, but that was just to teleport everybody away. Kuma really hasn't seen firsthand that much of Luffy, so it does beg the question, why did Kuma devote 2 years of his life to protecting the Straw Hat's ship? Why did Kuma find it so important to protect Luffy and his friends in general and pick out all of these ideal training spots for them? It feels as though it might be something more than Luffy just being Dragon's son. I think this chapter could kind of fill in that sort of burning question regarding why exactly did Kuma take such an interest in Luffy, and why did he find Luffy to be so important? So I've high hopes for next chapter. I think next chapter is going to be one of the most unique chapters in One Piece, because we've seen the young Luffy flashbacks, right? And we've seen the start of his journey where he's setting off from the island, but there is this curiosity of just what was it like, what was Luffy like, what was he thinking in this little in-between period? You know, Ace had already set off, Luffy was on his way to finally setting off from the island. What were his thoughts? What was he doing? What type of state of mind was he in right before, in the year or two before he finally made his journey out to go try and become Pirate King, to try and find the One Piece? So again, I'm getting very much, I guess, Lost Chapter vibes from the upcoming chapter that we're about to get. So high hopes for that. As for the rest of the chapter, Bonnie's situation, I think obviously Kuma making the deal and everything, it was exactly as to be expected. The manner in which Kuma chose to take up the deal, where basically Kuma hears all of these terrible consequences, all of these things that he's gonna have to go through, and Kuma's just crying from happiness because all that matters to him is that, okay, Bonnie's gonna be cured, that's all that matters. It is very reminiscent of the Luffy moment at Amazon Lily, where Boa Hancock is giving him this ultimatum and explaining that, yeah, I can do this, I can, fix your friends and everything like that, but then in return, you're not going to get a ship, and your brother's going to die, and you're not going to be able to do anything, and you won't be able to save him. And Luffy barely even registers that part because it doesn't matter. He's just happy that his friends are going to be saved, and Boa Hancock's going to undo the petrification. So that sort of immediate, sort of purely altruistic, purely selfless sort of thinking of not even thinking of one's own needs and desires, and just being happy that somebody else that you care about is going to be helped. That sort of moment from Kuma this chapter felt very reminiscent of how Luffy acted with Boa Hancock all the way back then. So Oda really is carving out, we already think so highly of Kuma, but with every single chapter of the backstory so far, it really feels like Oda really is carving out Kuma to be just basically the ultimate saint, the ultimate pure-hearted person in One Piece, the ultimate kind-hearted figure. It really is funny that, just the way readers initially felt about him, just this stone-cold, stoic, terrifying cyborg, going by this reputation of a tyrant. Oda likes to play with readers' expectations quite a bit. Kuma's the perfect example of that, so definitely appreciate that. Kuma, obviously, we've sung his praises enough. He's a great character, phenomenal character. Will go down as one of the best characters in One Piece by far, but the real kicker at this point is going to come towards the end of his backstory and transitioning back to the current day, where he makes his final sacrifices, right? So, still waiting on that, obviously. Kizaru was the pleasant surprise this chapter. I was talking last chapter about how much I hope that Kizaru is going to get some sort of more interesting characterization, some sort of potential for a character turn when we cut back to Egghead Island. I put out videos in the past, one video in particular talking about his Kizaru and just, the tragedy of how he seems to have kind of sold his soul to the corporation, not the corporation, but the organization that he works for, but at the same time, we're seeing the traces throughout Egghead Island of a potential for a character change, so go check out that video. It's the tragedy of Admiral Kizaru, because hopefully his story doesn't end in tragedy. Hopefully these traces, these seeds that we're seeing being planted of Kizaru actually having a heart, of having a personal desire, of not wanting to just blindly go along with the Marines, hopefully that comes into fruition in some significant way when we cut back to the scene with Saturn. So high hopes for Kizaru. I think just seeing him, the novelty of seeing him, once this feared, terrifying opponent, right, this also similarly seeming like a cold-hearted individual, much like Kuma in many ways, him just being a normal person, just having friends, just sitting around, partying, all of that, I think that is, it's one of the most beautiful things that Oda is doing throughout this whole Egghead Island arc in this final saga, which is opening our eyes to understand more and more and humanize more and more some of these other side characters that we've been seeing, like Aokiji, Garp, and I think Kizaru, Sentomaru. I think these are some of the characters that are on the further end of things that really needed to be humanized, but it's happening right now. And, we're really starting to understand that the true villains are, above the world government, really the celestial dragons at the core of it all. And really, the true bad apples of the celestial dragons, Gorisays, Emu, Holy Knights, like Vigarland, etc. Because even among the celestial dragons, there are some, like Don Quixote Miosgord, who were able to change in certain ways, but we're starting to understand that a lot of the evil that we see in the world really just keeps going back, traced up and up and up and up to certain roots, and those really terrible roots are what just spreads the evil to everything down below. Kizaru ultimately he's done many bad things, or at least things against our protagonist that we have not liked, but he is ultimately just functioning blindly as a weapon that's being pointed and shot. So interesting to see if he chooses to remain being that weapon when we cut back. Now, lastly, I want to talk about the community voice from my top tier of patrons. So we're talking about 2 submissions today. Chino Alabacha brought up, also wanted to add a little theory that the guy that Ace beat is the Burn Scars man. Yeah, this is something that was coming up in stream that I think is interesting to talk about, which is we're still missing this one road poneglyph being held by a figure who has burn scars. Some people have talked about it being Dragon because Dragon has the marks. Dragon sails on a black ship from what it seems like. Dragon, if he has wind abilities, could create whirlpools like has been talked about. So these are all interesting Dragon is an interesting possibility. At this point, it doesn't seem like it could be Saul, unless Saul has been doing stuff like that. But the candidate that just popped up, the mysterious warlord that was defeated by Ace, he would likely have burn scars. The question is, at this stage in the story, would Oda have the final road poneglyph be in the hands of just some warlord that was defeated by Ace? No disrespect to Ace, but if Ace defeated this guy's probably not a top tier character or something. Would this guy just randomly have one of the 4 arguably most important items in the One Piece world, excluding the 3 ancient weapons, basically? I don't know about that. So this could easily just be a random bit of information, just a fun little way to name drop Ace once again in the story, give him some hype and, some feats. I don't know if it's necessarily going to turn into something major, like a major character reveal, but, it would be cool to see if it does. And then from Braxton Hart, he says, the free will theme of this arc is strong, with Kuma, Kizaru, Vegapunk, Sentomaru, and Bonnie all coming together to party and eat in the midst of the ongoing tragedy. Yeah, I 100% agree. I really liked that little scene because a lot of people pointed out it is reminiscent of the Skypiea party where, again, it's the Straw Hats just partying around a big bonfire, but the feelings of just freedom, liberation that these sort of scenes evoke, it is very, very relevant to the events of the current day, because right now everybody is basically in this state of either you're rebelling against the world government at Egghead Island or you represent the world government at Egghead Island, and lines are being drawn in the sand. This once really, really happy little group of characters, you've got Vegapunk taking one side, Bonnie taking one side, Sentomaru taking one side, and then you got Kizaru on the other side, and finally, obviously, Kuma is going to arrive as well. So the final question is Kizaru also going to join in this theme of free will that is so important for Egghead Island? Is he going to come over to the other side, the good side, by the end of it all? I have my fingers crossed that he does, but we gotta wait and see. So definitely looking forward to next video, and make sure that you get your puzzle for yourself, or as a gift for any One Piece fan this holiday season. The link is in the description below.